Hello, I'm Gary. That's Brooke. Normally you guys see us sailing around on the open ocean, but right now we're in New Zealand and we're at Hawdon Valley. We just parked the van that we've been driving around for the last 4 weeks, and we're gonna hike up to a hut and spend the night up in the mountains.
We are currently in the South Island, but we've actually explored both the North and South Island of New Zealand. And today, as we're doing this hike, we're gonna share the 5 things that we didn't realize or didn't expect about trying out van life in New Zealand.
So our van is Gustav, or Gus for short, and it's a 2000 Mazda Bongo, and he was already built out with a bunk and some storage and a galley and everything you need to be self-contained. But we had to add a little bit. So because we like to do this YouTube thing and we need to bring our laptops with us and we wanted to have Starlink with us, we added a battery, an electrical system, a solar panel, and a refrigerator so that, whoa, I don't think I'm going the right way. Brooke, how was your first river crossing?
I fell in immediately.
It was only knee-high, but it's moving really fast, and it swept Brooke right under her butt. Luckily, she's carrying a dry bag, so all the gear is fine. If you get on Instagram or watch YouTube about van life in New Zealand, it looks like an absolute dream, doesn't it? But we thought we'd share with you 5 things that we found to be not what we expected about living in a van and traveling through New Zealand. Number 1, the restrictions. If you look at photos of van life in New Zealand, it looks like you can park, have an entire expanse in the background with a mountain with a snow cap on it, and have it all to yourself. But it turns out that freedom camping here doesn't actually have too many freedoms associated with it. There are restrictions just about everywhere on where you can park overnight and where you can camp. And we found that to be a little surprising, just how restrictive it is. A lot of the free campsites that you can park at end up just being gravel parking lots, packed full with 30 to 50 other camper vans, way out in the middle of the nowhere with just a drop toilet, sometimes without even a nice view. And that was a little disappointing to us. Of course, our perspective is a bit skewed on this because we live on a sailboat and we get to anchor and see some of the most remote places on our planet and have them all to ourselves, and pretty much can anchor anywhere we want. There are some rules, of course, but here in New Zealand, you're confined to the roads and confined to the spots where you're legally allowed to park for the night. We did find a couple beautiful spots, and the trick is drive down a gravel road for at least an hour, and eventually you get so far away that you'll have spots all to yourselves. They're a lot harder to find, and you won't find them on any of the camping apps, but it's worth the extra effort if you want some remoteness and solitude in nature.
Splash zone. So I had big dreams of doing van life even before we got the boat. We actually even considered doing van life instead of sailing. But ultimately we really love the ocean, so sailing won. But you know, you always see these beautiful Instagram shots of vans in, you know, the wilderness, parked next to a beach with an amazing sunset, or in the mountains somewhere. So yeah, I had really high hopes for being able to park wherever we wanted. But yeah, just because you're self-contained, that is not the case. But aside from that, there's also many other restrictions. Pretty much everywhere we go, there's no fires, no drones, no dogs. We even saw no high heels one time, which was hilarious. But yeah, we were hoping to get some really amazing drone footage and have a fire occasionally. You know, camping, you have to have a fire, roast marshmallows. I don't know, we've not been able to do that. We found one spot where we could have a fire. Yeah, so just way more restrictions than I ever imagined. And maybe we're just spoiled a little bit because we're really limited to the roads here. And with sailing, the ocean is huge and we can pretty much go wherever we want. And it's really given me a new appreciation for the word freedom.
All right, the next thing, the number 2 thing that you might not hear about regarding van life in New Zealand is the bugs. New Zealand is notorious for having sandflies, and these little ankle biters will drive you absolutely insane.
What are you guys doing right now?
How are they all getting in here?
Oh yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Oh, yeah.
How are they getting
Just
in?
killing some bugs.
What kind of bugs?
Sandflies. The devils.
They come around day or night and they will bite the crap out of you. They will crawl up your pants and bite you on the leg. Bug sprays don't really seem to help, and they're almost everywhere. Every now and then you might find a campsite that doesn't have any, and that's a real lucky time. But otherwise, you pretty much got to keep your van closed up.
And not only are there sandflies and bugs, there's more pests like mice and rats. And we were lucky enough to have a guest in Gus one night. And funny enough, when we went the next day to see if we could find some mouse traps to get rid of him, we pull up to the general store and the clerk goes, do you have a mouse in your van? And we're like, yeah, is that a thing here? And then there's some possums at some of the huts that raid people's food, and yeah, they just create a lot of havoc. And it's kind of interesting since New Zealand's biosecurity to get into the country is so strict. And then there's also these alpine parrots that everyone raves, you have to see them, you have to see them. And you do, they're beautiful, but they're absolute little menaces. So they were trying to eat our friend's solar panel wires, and they were chewing another car's tires. So yeah, all sorts of fun little critters here.
All right, the third thing that you won't be told about, the weather. Every time you see a picture from New Zealand, it's on a crystal clear, sunny day with unlimited visibility. You can see the snow-capped mountains way off in the distance. That does happen, but it's not going to happen every day, which means if you're here traveling for a few weeks or even a couple months, probably at least half of your days are going to be kind of bad weather. It rains here a lot. It's very windy here a lot, and not every day is perfect. So some days it's just not going to look like that. And with that also means that some activities that you want to do or sites that you want to see will be closed on the days that you plan to do them. So you really need to be flexible with your weather. For example, when we did the Tongariro Alpine Crossing hike, we chose the one day that week that was supposed to be clear, and we drove 4 extra hours to get down there to do it and rearranged our whole plans for the week just so we could do that on a clear day, because without nice weather, it's just a long walk. We're pretty used to this from our sailing life, and we really have no problem accepting that a couple days are just days to sit inside, maybe work on the computer, and not go explore outside. But if you're here for a short trip, just remember, it's not going to be perfect every day.
Yeah, so lucky for us, we haven't had to worry about any snow, but we've had to worry about rain. A lot of the hikes here have river crossings, and sometimes if it's been raining for like the past several days or something, they're just impassable, or you have to like go in a river up to your shoulders. So that's really no fun, and we don't really have the gear for that. And there's also on these back roads, there's a lot of fords that you have to cross. And again, if it's been raining, they can get pretty sketchy and pretty deep sometimes. So definitely have to keep your eye on the weather here. And although it is summer, we see a lot of pictures of people in the water in New Zealand, and in waterfalls and at the beaches and in the lakes. And in our opinion, it is really cold. I don't know if we're just used to the tropics, but the water is frigid. So we really haven't done any water activities while we've been here. We went to a really beautiful private waterfall the other day, and I stuck my feet in. I brought my bathing suit. I was gonna jump in, and I like literally just couldn't do it. The water had to be like 15 Celsius. And yeah, Gary decided to brave it. And he jumped in, and as soon as he hit the water, he lost his breath. So yeah, not really what we expected. And the other thing is yes, it is summer here, but in the mountains, it gets really cold, especially at night. And when the sun's shining, it's beautiful. But as soon as the sun goes down, it gets brisk. So you really have to pack all sorts of clothing, from bathing suits to winter jackets and gloves and hats. There is one other thing I want to mention about weather. So there's really two types of van setups that we've seen throughout our travels. And the first setup is kind of like Gus, where the kitchen's in the back of the van. And the second setup is with the kitchen inside the van. And we really thought that having the kitchen in the back would be awesome. But turns out, since it rains so much, it's really difficult to cook when it's raining. So that's kind of been challenging. If you're looking for a van, maybe keep that in mind. Get the kitchen inside. The other thing that has really shocked us is number 4, crowds. There have been crowds for everything we've gone to do in the South Island. It doesn't matter if it's a hike, going to a tour, going to a campground, everything is packed. One of the reasons that people tell you to come to the South Island is because it's remote and it's not as busy as the North Island. But I tend to disagree.
The South Island is way less populated than the North Island, but all of the tourist hotspots like Queenstown, Milford Sound will be absolutely slammed full. And you'll see lots of pictures from those places that makes it look like no one else is there, which it's real easy to crop people out of a photo or way to turn. In fact, on some of the hikes that we've done, there's actually a line, or as they call it here, a queue, to take a picture at some of like the more prominent spots. We usually refer to them as like Instagram rock. The hikes are still super enjoyable and the views are super stunning, but if you're expecting peace and quiet and tranquility, you can't go to the most popular spots. So right now, we've been hiking for almost 2 hours and we haven't seen another person yet. That's probably because you have to cross rivers on this hike, and that's going to deter most people. So if what you're after is to be alone in nature, it's achievable. But don't expect it in the most popular Instagram-worthy places. The other thing with the crowds is reservations. You pretty much need to have a reservation for anything you want to do here. And that doesn't mean just going out to dinner. All of the campgrounds require reservations. A lot of the huts, like we're going tonight to stay in, require reservations, and they do book up far in advance. Even the ferry that we took to get from the North Island down to the South Island in our van, that was fully booked. So we had to take the ferry at 2 a.m. when we came down. On the way back in a week, we made a booking further in advance so we can take one during daylight hours, which we're really looking forward to. But yeah, there's a lot of people visiting and you probably won't be alone like you might think if you only look at Instagram. It doesn't make it any less enjoyable, just something to be aware of.
Despite the South Island being really populated and oversaturated with vans and campers, We haven't met anyone. When we pull into a campground, everyone just kind of sticks to themselves. They don't really like go around and talk to people. We've chit-chatted with a couple people, like when we were cooking in like a community kitchen, but otherwise, yeah, it's not like buddy boats where you pull into an anchorage, all your friends are there, and if you don't know anyone, you get in your dinghy and you go around the anchorage and see who's up for sundowners. So yeah, that's been a bit interesting for us actually, because we thought the van life community would be similar to sailing life. I want to interrupt this video for just a second to talk about something really important, which is water. And we've only brought one water bottle with us for a hike that's going to take us 2 days. And the reason for that is because we have our Epic water filter bottle with us, and we've been using it for the last few years. We 100% trust this thing. We've filled it in so many different places, from Colombia, Mexico, Panama, French Polynesia, basically throughout our travels, in tap water and waterfalls, just numerous different places. And it filters out bacteria and things like fluoride. Anyway, one filter lasts 3 to 4 months, and it's what we use every single day. It's probably one of our most important pieces of gear that we have with us. So anyway, go check out epicwaterfilters.com. Take a look at the Sailing One Life bottle. It's obviously our personal favorite, but there's lots of cool designs that are available. And if you use code EPIC1LIFE at checkout, you get 20% discount off your order. And it helps us out a lot as well. So anyway, all right, back to the show. Oh, it's so cool. Wow.
How did this giant house get out here in the middle of nowhere? Let's go see if anyone's home.
Looks like people are there. I see stuff hanging up.
What?
So cool. Hi. Hut & Hut is located in Arthur's Pass National Park, and there was only one other person there when we arrived. It is a serviced hut, which means it has bunks with mattresses. This particular hut has room to sleep 20. It also has a heating source, a water supply to wash hands and use for cooking, and even a place to hang your wet clothes, which drops down in front of the fireplace to dry. A service hut is maintained by a warden who occasionally comes by to make sure all is in order and updates the whiteboard with weather and trail closures. Outside the hut, there is a rain collection system, a wood shed with axe for chopping firewood, and a long drop toilet. The beautiful view completes the hut, making it a perfect spot to relax and get a snooze in before hiking the 6 miles back to the van. Those are shoelaces. He's definitely trying to steal your shoelaces.
What are you doing? You're too close for focus. Hey! What's this bird doing?
He's like, take my picture, take my picture. We've arrived at our hut for the night, and we're gonna leave you guys right here. I've already done an outfit change because it's cold here. You remember that number 3 weather thing? And we're gonna resume with number 5 in the morning. Gary's out there sawing wood. It's hard to see him, and I'm barefoot because my sneakers are soaked from me falling in the river earlier and from all the river crossings. So anyway, I'm gonna stand here on the porch and watch him saw the wood. But it's pretty cold out right now, and it's best just to stay inside. There's no lights or anything in the cabin, so we're just gonna play some cards and go to bed early. The first 4 truths about van life in New Zealand might sound like a list of complaints, but truth number 5 is the silver lining that rises above and beyond, rewarding you tenfold, making the negatives feel like a small price to pay.
Which brings us to number 5. New Zealand will absolutely blow your mind. Just look at where you can wake up.
We just woke up in Hot and Hut, which is one of hundreds of hiking huts out here in New Zealand. And you know, before we arrived, we really didn't do much research on hiking and things. We knew New Zealand is very popular for hikes, but they have these huts that you can walk to. So you can split up, do, you know, an overnight and then continue the hike the next day, or you can even do multiple day stays. But the huts are relatively cheap. That one was 25 New Zealand for one night. And it's a great little shelter and a perfect place to just disconnect and enjoy nature for a while. The most impressive thing to us has been that you don't even have to drive that far to get a new landscape and a new view from the coast to the mountains. It's just like everywhere you look is spectacular. We have seen and done so much here in New Zealand, and we've been really fortunate to be able to have so much time to be able to explore both the North and the South Island. I think a lot of times people fly into Auckland and head straight to the South Island. There are so many wonderful things to see in the North Island as well. The East Coast, the Bay of Islands, is one of the most beautiful bays that we have ever sailed into. And on the West Coast, you have Raglan and Maricopa. Maricopa is a black sand beach. It has the blackest sand we have ever seen. It wasn't that crowded, so maybe that's why I liked it so much. We just pretty much had it all to ourselves. But people just don't go out there. That's not part of the typical tourist ring.
No matter what you're after here in the outdoors, you'll find it here in New Zealand. Whether you're chasing waterfalls, New Zealand has you covered. There's probably thousands of waterfalls. Sometimes in some places, you can see like 5 at one time. There's hiking like galore. There's thousands of tracks suitable for beginners all the way up to experts. There's multi-day hikes, there's single-day hikes, and the scenery that you'll get yourself into is just absolutely stunning. And if hiking's not your thing, there's a lot of easier walks that can take you to some really, really awesome things. Sometimes you can just drive right up to them without even having to like get out of the car to see it. There's mountains, there's volcanoes, there's geothermal activity, and there's hot springs. There's even some rivers that are so hot you can hardly get into the water. If you're into lighthouses, there's something like 20 lighthouses here in New Zealand, and they're on some of the most spectacular sites that you could ever imagine.
One of my favorite things has just been driving along the countryside and seeing the New Zealand countryside here. You know, it's exactly what I picture New Zealand to be like, with the sheep and the cattle and the rolling hills. It's beautiful. I don't know how to explain it.
And if hiking or walking really isn't your thing at all, you can always hop on a helicopter or an airplane. We took a flight from Queenstown across the mountains to Fiordland and into Milford Sound, and it was one of the most spectacular views I've ever seen. flying over those glaciers and looking down at the blue ice and then swooping into the fjord of Milford Sound through the fog, through the clouds, and like through this narrow, giant green cliffs with waterfalls splashing down off the sides. Felt like you were on a different planet. It felt that wild. It was so cool.
Even though New Zealand is a relatively small country, there's just so much to see here. And of course, the South Island has all of the real touristy places like Roy's Peak and Milford Sound. Milford Sound, it is my absolute favorite scenery I've ever seen in my life. Flying over Milford Sound and seeing the blue lakes and the glaciers. I've never seen anything like that, and I'll never forget that flight. There's a little town, Akaroa. It's a seaside village, and it's exactly what a seaside town should be. It has this really beautiful lighthouse that was actually moved and restored from its original location in Akaroa. But there's just so much to see and do here. I can't talk highly enough about all of the things and all of the scenery in New Zealand.
One last thing about New Zealand that we haven't mentioned yet, but it should probably be one of the first things, is that the people here are absolutely incredibly nice and welcoming, and they're truly keen on you enjoying their country and seeing what their landscapes and wildlife and everything has to offer here. We've been welcomed into quite a few homes here, and people have reached out and helped us all along the way, and it's been incredible. In fact, we wouldn't be able to be doing this van journey without the help of Gene, who is offered us a mooring back in Whitianga, where One Life is sitting right now, and he's been keeping an eye on her and sending us video messages letting us know that she's doing fine almost every week. So big thank you to Gene. You're a legend. And if you happen to be around Coromandel, check out his fishing charters. It's Fitty Angler. We'll put a link down below, and go catch some big kingies with him. Mushrooms, anyone?
Right, well, we're almost back to Gustav, so we're gonna leave you guys right here, but we hope you enjoyed this segment of van life. And if you only watch us for our sailing adventures, don't worry, we'll be back to sailing really soon. Yes!